One's ready. Go!
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the One's Ready podcast. You're in the team room. You got me. You got Steven Pietras, my brother. He's been on the podcast one other time. But before we get to his bald ass, head over to drinkhoist.com. Use the promo code One's Ready. If you guys don't know, they've got this 5-star punch just came out. They're supporting Folds of Honor. Fantastic taste. The black cherry is still kind of my jam, but you haven't had this flavor yet, have you?
Nope,
not yet, because I've been stingy about it, and I refuse to have Hoist send it to you. But that's cool.
So but somebody I know has a contact, but don't want to hook me up. All right.
Yeah, don't want to hook you up. So head over to drinkhoist.com. Use the promo code One's Ready. Get yourself a discount. Let them know that you're there, because we sent you for that IV level hydration that you guys all like to hear. So the reason why we have Steven, so in case the viewers out there missed the Hurricane Helena episode that we did, why don't you just go into real quick rehash of why you are even on here talking about this?
Okay. So I've been a air traffic controller for over 20 years now. In the Air Force, I've only been a Air Force air traffic controller, so I know this is going to be some FAA stuff, but been doing that for 20 years, and more recently in the last 5 or 6 years been doing mostly LZSO stuff, but still have ratings in a tower and control when I get a chance to.
Yeah. So not only you've been doing it for 20 years, you used to teach it at the schoolhouse as well, the Air Force schoolhouse. You're also landing zone safety officer, landing zone control officer certified, and all that kind of good stuff. So you're familiar with not only the three positions. And dude, here's where I'm going to start messing myself up. And remember, you've held ratings or CTO ratings in flight data, local, and ground. I don't think you didn't do any RAPCON stuff, radar stuff, right?
I have radar as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Not a full RAPC or center, but I've got some ratings in the radar.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, definitely more qualified than me. So for the folks that are out there, we're just going to kind of do a preliminary chat about kind of what happened last night with the tragic events in terms of Pat 25, American Eagle 5342 over the Potomac. We're probably 12 hours in, maybe 14 hours in. So it happened last night. Man, what for everybody, not just the folks on board, but also the recovery team, the divers that are going in there. Like the Potomac one, it's, the end of January right now, that it was frozen over, I think 4 days ago. So like that,
I heard some reports that I haven't validated them or anything, but I've heard reports that there's only about 8 feet of water where they went in.
Oh, well, so that's good.
So, but again, I don't know if that's actually, because if that's 8 feet of water, doesn't seems like it would be deeper, but I don't know.
Well, the average depth of the Potomac is 24 feet. At its deepest part, though, it's 107 feet deep. But I don't know where that falls into where that 8 feet seems weird, though, because 8 feet would be, I mean, you'd still see parts of the aircraft sticking out. And I haven't seen that in terms of videos or pictures. So I don't know. Hopefully, because the deeper it gets, man, that is more and more difficult recovery for sure. So I'm not going to be able to, or maybe I can. I can try and input the sound on here, but there's a video that an aviation YouTube channel put out that's got the air traffic control dialogue. It's got, you can hear it, but at the same time you can also see it, as well as the flight data tracks that are on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share screen, and then we're going to go through it. Maybe we'll just watch it all the way through, and hopefully the sound will be loud enough to where you can hear it. But because I haven't, my dumbass hasn't figured out how to input this over the software we use. So here we go.
789, contact Scott Park today. Okay. American 7130 for the final. Well, American 3130. And 25, traffic is stopped from Wilkes Bridge to CRTA is 1,200 feet, start runway 33. Contact Traffic Position Separation. This difference group. American 1630, tower runway 1 mile forward, traffic around start runway 33, dispatch 16 on final. Runway 1. Whiskey 6307, people are announced November 9.7 today. American 1631, star 3214, sub 25, service 2 mile left base runway 33, no delay, runway 1 clear for immediate takeoff. Number 1, clear for takeoff, American 1630. Pass 25, get the security inside. Pass 25, pass behind the security. It's going to have a aircraft inside personal separation. Good service. American 472 by pass now for individual. American 472, watch star 1 star 3217.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop it right there. Yeah, so I mean, you could definitely, well, at least I don't know, maybe because we hear it enough, you can definitely hear when it's Pat 25, the helicopter talking.
Yeah.
So what is your kind of initial take on all this?
So it seems one that it was probably a standard transition. Like that was probably a normal transition for those helicopters, and the controller was familiar with it, just like the helicopter was. So that's probably nothing out of the norm. But the problem is, so one, you call like giving traffic is probably the biggest thing in this. He said he had traffic in sight, but do you have that traffic in sight, or do you have somebody behind him in sight? Because working, being at night with a bunch, if in a terminal environment at a busy airport for civilians, you usually have multiple planes on final lined up 20 to 30 miles back, and they're all just coming in a line, just efficiency of dropping them in there. So if that helicopter had a different aircraft in sight and thought it was the one, that's probably, one of those is like the controller needs to confirm which aircraft is in sight, and same with the helicopter pilot, which, and that would be, hey, traffic you're going to follow is this guy, or you're going to pass behind this guy, but also there's traffic behind them, so that the pilot knows that there's multiple people, and which one are you actually following or trying to get behind. And it's the unfortunate thing is, being, sometimes you got to be an asshole and be like, hey, confirm this is the guy you have in sight to the helicopter pilot rather than this guy, and vice versa. The been telling the American or whoever was on final, like, hey, there's going to be a helicopter transition below you or behind you, so they can be looking for him visually.
And that was the one thing that I noticed is, and I don't know, is it a requirement from the .65, which for everybody out there, the .65 is a shortened abbreviation of it. What is it? 71-110.65. Yep. Is the regulation that dictates air traffic control for military, for FAA, like it's the Bible, and all that kind of stuff. So, but it's been a long time since I looked at it. Is a traffic call like that to Pat 25 saying, hey, traffic, there's a whatever short final, is that also a requirement for him to pass traffic to the American Airlines flight to go, hey, there's a traffic, or because you already transmitted and you're talking to it, the assumption is that American Airlines or that aircraft that's short final knows that, okay, I'm also looking for a helicopter?
So it kind of depends. The problem with this one, so we're getting into airspaces. You're in a class Bravo. I believe that is a class Bravo airspace, which means it's an IFR airspace. So even the helicopter is getting IFR services, and with visual separation, you have to issue traffic. And you have to have separation prior to providing separation. You have to have it before and after conducting visual separation. So it's a weird thing, and it's kind of, I don't want to say it's hard to explain, but if you've never been in a radar environment with those kind of rules, it can be hard to explain.
Yeah.
Yeah, traffic should have been given anything, but it's one of those is we get, I don't want to say complacent, but we do. You get used to the same. If you've seen that transition hundreds of times and never had an issue and done exactly what that happened, it I don't want to, should always be paying attention to details, but people get complacent.
Yeah, and the whole point of this is not to. It's kind of like when I talked to Bain when the Navy shot down its own F-18. Like it's not the idea is not to armchair quarterback or place blame or something. It's just to figure out how could this have happened. And I agree with you in terms of when you have seen the same pattern, the same call signs, the same whatever. Like that is why these air traffic controllers are able to just rattle off, climb and maintain 3,000 feet, and given vectors like that, and it rolls off so quick. And each one of these airfields, they have, publications, and that each aircraft has its own iPad that has, rules for every single, it lays out all the runways, labels all the taxiways. It talks about all the different types of approaches and that you could possibly do for each of these airfields. And these pilots and co-pilots are flying these routes every single day. Same with the air traffic controller. So, like, if there's something that deviates, then there can be an issue.
So, kind of in some of our meetings this morning at work, we were just talking about so my first questions were, okay, it happened at a very low altitude as well. Like that helicopter was transitioning based off the radar feed, it was 200 feet.
Yeah, so that's low.
So they're transitioning, and it happened at about a mile final. So the CRJ was really low too. All this happened below 500 feet, which is really low in air traffic in airspace. But first thing I was like, okay, who was TCAS? Did the aircraft? Why didn't the TCAS go off in the CRJ, or something, a traffic alert, or something being, initiated by radar? Like, hey, there's a helicopter here. And same with, I'm not familiar with the H-60s if they have TCAS, but there are different things that tell an aircraft, hey, there's traffic here. But I don't know that system enough to know if it's so low that it's not going to go off.
Yeah, maybe it turns off at a certain altitude.
Also, I know the helicopter was broadcasting its ADS-B because you have the radar track of it. So if he wasn't doing that, you would just have a primary target and you wouldn't see all that data. So it's one of those, that's what I bring up first is where was that kind of stuff, and the investigation it might have been like, I just don't know.
Right.
All that, I just don't know the investigation yet. And it's obviously, like I said, it's 12 hours, 13 hours old. So everybody's just like, what the hell happened? And
yeah, I mean, so have you guys heard anything from initial thoughts about, maybe not initial thoughts, but initial because I'm sure you guys get some kind of like flash bulletins or something like that through the FAA, right?
The FAA might. The Air Force, we're just a bunch of gossip.
Oh,
mongers.
Well, I mean, look at what we're doing right now.
Though, to be fair, so a lot of our guard guys, they're all FAA. So I've, reached out to some of them too, and they have a little bit more access to that data, but just preliminary reports. Everybody, they're essentially doing what we're doing, was reviewing what we just did.
Yeah.
And looking at it. NTSB will put out an official report. Usually a controller, there's usually, in any aircraft incident, there's usually multiple different factors or contributing factors. And usually this one will be, some will be air traffic, the controller, some will be the pilots, and just kind of see what the back history is on it, on the tracks of them, why because I think initially the CRJ was going to go to runway 01, but then the controller changed them to runway 33 to make it more efficient for the aircraft. But what I've heard, but I haven't seen the report on that. So that
And
could have
I don't
changed
think
it.
I heard that in the video that we watched either.
Yeah.
But
So
I mean, I could be wrong.
there's some backstory where that's a really close up picture rather than looking back out and seeing like, okay, what happened earlier that brought him in. But yeah, it's a shitty thing on any side, not only for the aircraft loss, like dealing with that. There's a lot of things that happen when you have. So how many ever controllers were up in that tower during that? They all got pulled out of that thing and straight to drug testing.
Yeah.
Straight to alcohol and drug, and then reports and interviews and investigation starts right away.
I mean, yeah, the tapes are getting pulled as soon as this initial. I got to imagine that as soon as this initial, like, because the biggest concern at that point of the priority is safety of flight of remaining aircraft in the area. So, I'll bring this up real quick just because this is
So
the
they did ground everybody there. They grounded everybody, and they weren't bringing any flights until later today or this afternoon.
right. But I mean, at the 30 seconds, 45
Oh yeah,
seconds, whatever before like you can see the line of aircraft, and this is still fairly zoomed in. I mean, if you were to continue southbound there, you'd see even more aircraft. So the priority is taking care of all the aircraft in the terminal area right now in terms of safety of flight. Once we can clear those out or turn around anybody that we can turn around, that is when that crew that's in there gets ripped out of there, um,
yeah,
drug tested,
yeah,
interviews and everything like that, while they put a new crew in there to start taking care of stuff.
yeah. I mean, unfortunately, like just because something like that happens, regardless of fault or not, you got to keep working.
Yep.
Um, that's that's one of those for the military side of the house. That's a lot what we train for or like to prepare people for. Like when it's stressful, like you, just because something bad happens or the base gets mortared or attacked or something doesn't mean you get to stop. Like you might have a stack that's still got to come in or get them out or whatever. So just because something bad happens doesn't mean that you don't have at least a little window of where you got to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not shut down and just melt right there. So
No, that's something else. That's a completely different podcast right there in terms of going
yes,
into continuing on the mission when you're
that's that
seeing people around
fight
you.
or flight, response.
Yeah.
What do dig in? And that's it probably becomes more real at that time because you're like, oh shit, people's lives, and that's something we kind of talked about this morning because some people were asking about this, and I mean, it's something as controllers we get uh, numb to. Like, you don't really when you're working traffic, very rarely do you go, oh, these are people's lives that you're dealing with, and especially in commercial live, like I've got 200 people on this. You just kind of you should be thinking about that, but you always think you just work the aircraft and you just get numb to that. Um,
Well, I got to
but
imagine, especially in a radar picture, which is what we're looking at right now, is kind of a radar picture because it's an icon, it's a call sign on there. Sure, you're talking to a person, but it's still, you're still got have that detachment. Maybe in the tower when you're working ground, flight data, local, you can look out and you see a plane or you see,
yeah,
so there's a little bit more linkage there, if you will.
yeah, you still just kind of and for a lot of people, it's instead of in the moment thinking about people, like especially when you're busy, you're just trying to think of how to make everything work.
Yeah.
Like not, I mean, obviously you're trying to be safe, but because that's the first thing, but you're trying to figure out this puzzle of how do I get everybody what they want, where they need to be, and not have any delays or be inefficient in how you're doing it. Um, and that becomes just a mind thing where you're just going through it and you just kind of forget like, hey, there's that could be my family on there or something.
Hmm.
Um, I even heard, I think it was on the radio. I heard that, or some ice, the U.S. ice skating team or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. You might fact check that, but
Is on that?
they might was some of it was on that.
Jeez,
So
man.
I don't know. Again, there's probably so much bad information out there right now.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I looked up the type of aircraft, and it depends on the
Yep.
configuration. But the
Yep.
aircraft, like the American Airlines itself, I think the most, if I remember right, the most it was supposed to have is like 78 people, depending on the configuration. 78 people, and then you know your helicopter, as an Army helicopter, has at least 4 people on it as the crew.
Yeah. I've heard. I think the latest one I've heard is 64 on the CRJ, 3 on the 60.
3 is unusual though, but maybe the Army runs it a little bit differently than the Air
Yeah,
Force.
I'm trying to think. R60s, I think they run with 3 a lot, but I could. I mean, times I've flown with them, they're usually running 3,
Hmm.
but
Yeah,
like
our guys,
two pilots and then one
SMA,
back guy. Yep.
one special mission aviator. Yeah,
Yep.
we usually run 4, so two up front,
Yeah.
pilot co, and then 2 SMAs. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, man, it's weird. So, in terms of this, you talked about the puzzle, the moving kind of puzzle that you're trying to work. Like, in my mind, and dude, this is totally hypothetical. Like, I'm not,
Yeah.
because you've never, I'm asking you because you've worked the 2 busiest airfields in the DoD at you work Nellis. Any air traffic controller that has either worked Nellis failed to work at Nellis because you couldn't get the rating, or you've heard about it. Nellis is insane when it comes to
Yep.
DoD. And then you also worked Balad out in Iraq, which was
Yep.
the DoD's busiest
Yep.
in theater. So
Yeah.
like that's insane. So even I look at this kind of problem and I go, I would probably get my ass handed to me, but I'd probably be okay. Like, how complex of a problem are they dealing with right now? Like, from what you just saw.
Well, I mean, honestly, based on the tracks, like it didn't look that busy or that big of a deal. Like splitting flights with a vehicle or helicopter transition low level. Like that's not out of the realm. Like
Right.
that'd be a normal day. And again, they might even have every airport has their own procedures that they have agreed on and have LOAs for or letter of agreement and all different types of procedures that might not fall under the .65 or any other regulation, but they're allowed to do it at their airport because they've bought off from all parties.
Local
So we don't
area.
know.
What do you
Yeah,
guys call it? You guys call them local air. What are those called?
usually just LOA, like a letter
Oh,
of
wait,
agreement.
there you go. That's what I was looking
Yep,
for. What does that stand for?
letter of agreement.
Letter agreement. Okay, so it's
Yeah,
and
the
each
FAA might call it something else, but
okay, so each airfield has its own thing, and that's why that. So in I don't know if it's the same with the FAA, and then definitely correct me if I'm wrong, but if you show up, like you join the Air Force and you're going to be an air traffic controller, you go through air traffic control school, and then you get to your first duty station.
yep.
You have 6 months to get your tower rating or to get your rating in whatever position you're holding, right?
Yeah, it depends. Like each location has a time limit based off the complexity of location.
Okay.
And so typically it's anywhere from, I think 6 months might be one of the smallest ones, all the way up to like 2 years. And
2 years.
it also depends on the facility too, because after tech school you get not a facility and a location. So you might get Nellis, but you're getting tower. So you might have, I forget, I think the tower at the time was like, I don't know, a year and a half to 2 years. But the radar was a lot longer there. Where you have other locations that might only be tower only in 6 months. So it really depends on, one, what location you get, and two, what facility you get. But yeah, like tech school, you're just going to learn. Um, Tech school was one of those. It was frustrating because tech school is not meant to teach you air traffic. It's meant to see if you have the ability to learn air traffic,
Okay.
which always frustrates me, but whatever. And then when you get your facility, you pass tech school, you go to your facility, and that's where you have OJT, or that 6 months to 2 years of in position training, learning all the regulations, more in depth, and any regulations that apply to that facility or that area, like their approaches and pattern altitudes and everything, all different types of things. So you know that place very well. Same with the FAA. Like you go to FAA, you get a facility, you're going to spend, 6 months to how many ever years getting your ratings in the positions, and then you're working. So there very rarely is there somebody there that's not familiar with something. Like you might have a trainee in position, but you have somebody else behind them watching them.
Right. It's yeah, I get what you're saying about the argument between, like, do you have the aptitude? Do you have the ability to be trained to handle this? Because I learned the basics of ATC, but I definitely learned how to control once I got out. And let's be clear about controlling here. Like, very limited ATC abilities coming out of me.
Well, that was one of those, when I was an instructor, like I'd get frustrated because we have students that, didn't meet the standard that was set forth, and there were ways to, well, did they actually make this mistake, or did they make this mistake over here? We could, would always get frustrated. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, why are we even filming? They're like, well, our job's not to film. Our job is to, or, it's not to determine whether they can do the job, it's to determine whether they can learn to do it. And I was like, which I don't, to me, I'm like, I don't know if that's the official position of the Air Force, but it's, it puts a burden on facilities because let's say you push them through tech school.
Yep.
And now I have a shitty person. Now I've got to deal with that. And I have to give them the opportunity to train, and if I invest, a year into them, and at the end of the year, they still don't cut it, I just wasted a whole year because you still couldn't do the job.
Yeah.
But, it is hard to cram air traffic into 8 weeks or whatever it is now. But
no, it's got to be more than 8 weeks. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think I went.
Maybe it's 11. I can't remember right now.
It's either 12 or 16 weeks was mine. But we were also learning tower and RAPCon.
Yeah. So that's what and the combats have their like Central Warfare's got their own course.
Yep.
Which I think is good, like, because they can really tailor it for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I don't know what the Special Warfare ones, if they learn tower and radar. But our guys learn tower and radar as well. They have like a couple weeks of fundies, and then radar, and then tower, or vice versa. Like, again, I don't know what it is right now.
Well, we're gonna find out because I've got an instructor from there at Combat Control School who teaches ATC. Her husband is a combat controller, or was a combat controller, and she has said that she's going to come on. Or so I'm like, so we're gonna get even me. Like, I actually don't know the details about it, so we're gonna get that. How much of air traffic control and in this incident in particular, and just I guess in general, is attention to detail? Because we from the special warfare side of the house, we hound on people and we smoke people's asses for mislabeling water bottles, mislabeling their fins, their equipment, not having everything aligned to a laser point accuracy, because what we're trying to do is instill a sense of pay attention to detail, because the little things, they 100% could kill you or kill somebody else. And oftentimes when you're a cone, you're like, dude, what's the big deal? Like, why are they just hounding us? Like, I actually got a comment the other day going like, it sure would be great if you guys would help explain why a cadre are focusing on some of this stuff. And it's like, well, one, man, you're not owed an answer, first off. But two is, we do it because we're trying to instill attention to detail so that later on, all the little things that can kill you, you're paying attention to.
Yeah, attention to detail for us is big. There's a lot of, everybody likes to say that there's a lot of different numbers, and air traffic controllers are always doing these math calculations and stuff. We're not.
It just sounds like you guys could talk really fast.
We do talk very fast. I even get that complaint from my wife. He's like, "Why do you talk so fast? I can't even understand."
Yeah.
But anyway, attention to details, good. And I think for me, when I hear attention to detail, I go into a more of a different direction. And it is still attention to detail, but it's situational awareness. Like, are you aware of actually what's going on? And can you take that information in and instead of just like, I saw it, like, but did you do anything with that information? And that, as silly as a water bottle is, like, do you have the situational awareness of the bandwidth to pay attention to something little? Because, yeah, it matters. Like, I mean, you guys are not immune to air traffic either, like, and those things where you might not always have a notepad to write down or whatever, like being able to pick up on little details and situational awareness in a theater and operations makes a big difference. Like, I don't, because that's just going to slow things down if you're always having to go back to the pilot. Hey, what did you say? Or what was that again? Or what did he say?
Mm-hmm.
All that stuff, like with their altitudes or, that's altitudes, call
It is
signs.
overwhelming at first, right? When you start
Oh yeah,
when you first start, you're on the ATC simulator or you talk to your first aircraft, you are kind of like, you're almost going back and looking at the instructor like, what did they say?
yeah,
Until like it's not a muscle, but until you can realize and internalize what they're saying because they're giving you good instructions or good here's my current altitude or yeah, I guess instructions is the right way to say it.
yep,
It's just how do you internalize it, and it can take some time. It was the same with
yep.
the joint terminal attack training, joint terminal attack controller training.
I mean, we call it controller ear,
Hmm.
and it's where you have to train your brain to hear that stuff because if you just put on a headset and you hear pilot talk, even if you're listening to this air traffic, on Instagram or YouTube, and you're hearing there's a bunch of different transmissions because that guy is talking to 20 different aircraft probably.
Yep.
Like so, and you're like, who was he just saying? Until you've kind of listened to that for a while and are able to internalize it, like we call it control ear, because you got to develop that skill to understand what's going on and what's being said. Um, and that's one of the hurdles that our air traffic controllers have to, as when they're a trainee, like we usually try to start them pretty low in training. Like I want to say flight data is low, but not as, we're not going to throw you into the thicket of things. We're going to start you in a position where you can slowly build those skills in that year, like flight data, answering phones, responding to input output data, all that kind of stuff, and then move up to ground where you're actually moving aircraft and vehicles, and then you get to the showtime of local, and now you're controlling everything in the air. But hopefully by then you have a better understanding of what everybody's saying.
Yeah. Well, then what I got to ask you then, because we do get a lot of questions about this, is like, hey, how challenging? Like, what's the failure rate? Not that I'm gonna like hold you to what the failure rate is, but like, people get worried about people get worried about dive physics with us, how much math, with dive school and stuff like that. Like, hey, don't sweat that, right? It's gonna be okay. If I pass dive physics, we're doing all right. But in terms of air traffic controller, like or air traffic control school, like what are we looking at and like how difficult is it, and then kind of what's the attrition rate there?
I don't know the attrition rate right now. I know our facility, I think 3 of the last 5, but we have a couple more now. So we've had a pretty high washout rate um, right now, but and we don't know. We're addressing whether that's our training, like because anytime we have a washout on, we're addressing. Okay, was that something we could have? What did we do wrong? How could we do better? Was it try to eliminate any factors or just get better from our end? Schoolhouse wise, I don't know what their numbers are, but for like that's air traffic is the schoolhouse, and hopefully your instructor will be able to answer a lot of these for you better than I can. But when I was there, it was just like, hey, I need you to be able to. I'm going to show you what we're going to do. Like usually you get to see what's coming the next day. You get taught a new skill or a new, whatever. Like today we're going to do vectoring, or today we're going to do, departures from intersections. The instructor should show you that, where you guys all get to see like how it should be done. And then you have all night till the next day to practice that, study that stuff, and that's, you guys should be in team rooms with static boards, going over that stuff and practicing it. That way the next day you're ready to go. Not saying you will be perfect, but can I learn something one day and try to apply it the next day? That's where I go there. That's a hard part. The data, learning the first 2 weeks or whatever it is of fundamentals for air traffic, that is a fire hose of knowledge. And there's no way around that. Like, you're just gonna have to suck it up and study. Like, but I don't think it's not, obviously it's not impossible. And I don't think it's that difficult, as long as you put the effort into to do it and develop good study habits. And ask for help when you need help. Like, hey, can you go over this with me, or flashcards or whatever?
Yeah. I mean, the goal of the air traffic control pipeline versus the aspect war pipeline is, we are trying to assess and select you. And we expect a high attrition rate. Like, we would actually probably be disappointed if we didn't have a high attrition rate. However, air traffic controller, the goal is not to eliminate people. The goal is to train people and to also evaluate you to see if you can handle it out on a real airfield. So, yeah, you're right. The first 2 weeks is a fire hose information. You study it. Everybody's there with you going through it. So ask for help, and study. I don't even know. I know we used to have the static, the little planes and everything like that. And we're talking, I got to imagine now, like, you'd probably be able to throw on some kind of Oculus headset and freaking go to town. Like, you know what I mean?
So those are in development.
Okay.
I think Atticel is the contract company that makes all the tower simulators.
Oh, okay.
And I think they are working on a VR version of it. They also have some light versions that are like tabletop versions of it. And I can't remember if they have a simulator at the schoolhouse, or like one for the students to use or not. I don't think they do.
Like,
but
when they're not around instructors, like back at their dorms?
yeah, I don't think they do, but it's, things have changed. So
Yeah.
But it
Get a hold of your dog.
I know.
Jeez.
I'm like, what is that noise? It's eating. Yeah. So, but that fire hose, that is a good opportunity to assess. And I don't know what the full pipeline looks now. Like, if there is a part prior to air traffic school where you guys get a fire hose of information rather than just getting your dicks kicked in. But that is a good time to assess, like, okay, if it really sucks for you, how do I develop, better study habits, or ones that allows me to learn information quick? Because sure, like you guys, like if we deploy or something, like even air traffic section, like when I get there, I'm going to be handed a packet of like, these are all the operations and procedures that we have here. You have 2 days, and then those guys are leaving, and you're the only ones there to work it. So same with you guys, like, you might have a lot bigger scope of things where you're just going to have information thrown at you, and you got to learn it.
You got to deal with it. Yeah. Yeah. Because, we had talked about it could be 6 months on the low end to a year and a half to get your rating at Nellis. Then you go straight, from Nellis, you deploy to Balad. You don't have 6 months to a year and a half to do that. You got to show that one is it's a 6 month to a year long deployment, but also the folks that have been there, they're going home. They're not hanging out.
That
They have
rotator's going.
Yeah. So you've got to, like, and I'm sure you're not just, starting to study right when you get there, right? You have you have the flight manuals and everything like that, so you can know the approaches, know the runways, know the taxiways, and everything like that. But still, until you can be in the tower and put eyes on it, that's when it starts to, at least for me anyway, that's when it starts to go like, oh, okay, now I have my bearings here, and now I can start hearing it.
Yeah, and it's challenging. I mean, that's part of to me, that's part of the fun. Like, okay, you get a new place, you get to figure it out,
Mm-hmm.
work this puzzle, and make it. Every controller has a different way of doing their patterns
Yeah.
and how they work. Like, it, so I mean, even FA, like everybody's got their own little way of doing things, um, which is cool because it means there's more than one way to get the job done.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
You got anything else on the incident?
it's just unfortunate. Um, it's I feel bad, even if he was a contributing factor. Like, I feel bad for that controller. You have to live with that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't think anything will happen to him. Like, we always in our career field, we're always like, if you have a mid-air or mess up, you're gonna go to jail. But at least me, I've never seen or heard of anybody even at fault go to jail. They'll probably lose your job.
Yeah.
But um, I think the weight of already knowing, that you're a contributing factor is already heavy enough.
Yeah, that's gonna be
But
rough.
you know, so no, it's just unfortunate, and it's one of those. It helps things like that reset our career field, um, and they go, okay, everybody take a break and realize what we're actually doing and what's at stake. So, even though they're unfortunate, they do usually produce a good, aftershock of it all.
Yeah.
Um, a lot people are a lot more safe, and you know, unfortunately, that will trickle down. But for a while, people will be more vigilant. So,
Well, I mean, if that's the good that comes out of this, then still not worth it. But
yeah,
at least the goodness, the silver lining of it, then maybe we can prevent and follow on accidents from happening. So you're right; it's super
yeah,
unfortunate. Yeah, and man, I don't know what to say on it. It sucks. It's unfortunate. Accidents happen. Um, Trying to avoid them as much as you can. And this is my parting shot, right? Is that in Air Force special warfare and in the special operations community and beyond, right? Like you could say flight operations, everything, right? It is inherently dangerous job. And we have checklists for days that help keep everything in line. They help mitigate certain risks, unneeded risks.
yeah,
But no matter what, everything that we are doing is still dangerous, and you will never be able to prevent every single thing to happen. And sometimes it's negligence, sometimes it's not being proficient enough or current enough or anything like that. Sometimes it's a equipment malfunction, but you're never going to get to 100% where
no,
there's no accidents. So, like, in fact, if you said, like, if we had a jump right now, and somebody got hurt, or we had an accident, or we had a couple cutaways, we get down on the ground, and instead of going, "Whoa, man, we got to throttle back on jump operations. Like, we really shouldn't be jumping as much as
yeah,
we really do." No, you do the 180 of that. We go, "Oh shit, we're not very proficient at jumping right now. All right, let's schedule a 2-week jump trip as soon as we possibly can, and we're going to jump our faces off, and so that you get proficient and you get comfortable, because you can, like, you're never going to mitigate every single thing that could possibly go wrong."
yeah. That's getting back in there and doing that. That's simulators. Like, people, they have a deficiency or something like that, and you're like, okay, go hit the simulator. Or even Air Force will do. I haven't seen it in a while, but they will develop like a sim plan. And it's like, hey, or you must review this stuff prior to working position again. And they'll push that out Air Force wide.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, you just gotta. it'll reset everybody, and everybody will be a lot more safe and more vigilant with how they conduct it. And that, like, they'll probably review all the procedures on transitions, over the Potomac like that. So
Yeah. All right, cool, man. Well, thanks for coming on. Appreciate you giving us the kind of details on it. And for everybody else out there, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Visit ONESREADY, the ONESREADY.com. I'll get it out eventually. And then buy a piece of merch. And then you guys, we talked about Hoist, but we got a whole bunch of other people on there as well to get yourself a discount and ready to train. All right, we're out here. Later.